keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. Thanks to everyone that's already joining chat. What's up, David? What's up, Donald? How's it going? Already hitting it with the hashtag TCC. Always enjoy that for sure. And I'm excited about this episode. We got a lot to talk about as far as 49ers news. A few clips of Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo talking about their relationship, the dynamics with the 49ers. So we're going to get into those as well. But it is Thursday, which means it's live Q&A. So if you have questions, make sure to leave them in chat because I'll make sure to get into those. I'm really excited about it. And how's it going, Roy, Shooter? Welcome to chat. So yeah, this was a very eventful day. Number one, Trey Sermon, who was waived yesterday, has been picked up. He was picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles. So that was one thing that came down earlier today. He was claimed. So Trey Sermon will not be on the 49ers practice squad. The 49ers will probably look to add a running back to the practice squad. Now, who will that be? Don't know for sure because they're going to have to get a young player as they already have 6 veterans. Unless they go ahead and move on from one of those veteran players. They could, in fact, move on from a Keaton Sutherland, but I think they might need him just in case something happens to Jake Brendel. So you have to make sure you're prepared. And what's up, Brad? Welcome to chat. Always love when you're in here. So I think there's a lot of things that still need to be decided by the San Francisco 49ers. But today, of course, the biggest news of all of it is the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo practiced for the first time with the 49ers, meaning he was on the field with Trey Lance again. And it's one of those things where I didn't think I would ever see it again. I never thought that this would actually happen, that Kyle Shanahan would bring Jimmy Garoppolo back and that Garoppolo would be the backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. I think it was a perfect world situation where you could bring him back on a cheaper salary, make sure that your quarterback room is nice and comfortable just in case something happens to Trey Lance. And it actually happened. So that was wild. It's crazy. And then, of course, John Lynch, had some comments today. Of course, they're doing some pressers without being on, the public, where the public can see it, no YouTube, all that, but just with media members. And there was some interesting things that come out from that as well, from Trey Sermon to Jordan Mason. Also, some Daniel Brunskill, Nick Zakelj news as well. So we're going to get into all of that today. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about is getting into all the 49ers news because there's a lot. But like I said before, if you have things to talk about, go ahead and leave them in chat. We'll get into those as well. I'm not going to dominate the conversation. I'm going to make sure that we have a fun conversation for all of us because it's that time. I mean, next week we are getting fully into 49ers news, 49ers versus Bears news, in fact, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. So I'm definitely excited about it. We had some guys change their jerseys number 2. There were a little bit of conflicting reports because, like, I saw that Talanoa Hufanga had changed his number to 30, but they didn't have George Odom changing his number. So I'm like, wait a second, what is actually going on here? That doesn't make any sense. For Talanoa Hufanga to change his number and then go to 30. So there was some interesting stuff with that. So we'll get into some of that as well. I think that, the jersey numbers are always interesting because we had Charvarius Moore going ahead and moving his number and, and other guys as well. So we'll get into that as well. So if you have stuff, go ahead. David says, is the Eagles run game more friendly to Sermon's run style? I think it is because right away you're going to put him in with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts wants to run the football. They're going to run a lot of read option. He's going to be in the shotgun. I think Trey Sermon fits what they do in Philly. I think it's a good situation for Trey. I think it's a good situation for Philly. And the 49ers got a better version of the style of running back that they were looking for with Jordan Mason and TDP. Those guys are going to do what they were hoping Trey Sermon was going to be able to do. Sermon had a lot of versatility in his game. The way that he moved a lot differently than most big running backs. I mean, he was one of those guys that played like a more agile player, but he lacked a little bit of acceleration. The vision came along this year. The acceleration, though, was something that he still needed to continue to work on. So we'll see what happens for Trey Sermon. I wish him nothing but the best. I don't think he was ever a fit. If you go back and watch the early draft, videos from last year after the draft, I was not exactly the biggest fan. I tried to talk myself into it. Other people came on and tried to talk me into it. And ultimately, I saw an improvement in training camp, which I got excited about. But it didn't translate to the game, which was a little frustrating for me because I would go to training camp, I would see him be decisive, run with that acceleration, get positive yards. I was like, okay. And that's when the John Lynch comments came out talking about Sermon had a really good training camp. He wasn't wrong because he really did, but it just didn't translate to the field, and I think that's too bad. And then JP says no 14 is still ZAF. Yeah, there is right now 14 is gone. So Brad Jones is filling in, really like Mason to 24. Yeah, Mason went to 24. Charvarius Ward went to 7. We had Danny Gray go to number 6. I know those ones happened. Brock Purdy apparently went to 13. So that was a movement. So 14 is now open. But we had some movement along the way. And it's a little bit, it's a little bit frustrating for some of these. I'm glad that we got 24 into Jordan Mason. I don't know if I was really a huge fan of him wearing 41. You look for those things to often happen. The one that's kind of interesting, Charvarius Ward going to 7. I thought that was interesting. Danny Gray just loses the 8. That one makes sense. So that's not too big. Brad just says, missed your opinion yesterday. What did you think of the guard we picked up yesterday? So Blake Hance comes over from the Cleveland Browns, and it's going to be a little bit easier to talk about today because John Lynch gave a little bit of understanding of exactly why they got Hance. And one of the reasons was they believe that he can play all 5 of the offensive line positions. In fact, he has done all 5 in the NFL. So they felt that versatility was something they valued. And part of the reason that they valued that so much was the fact that Daniel Brunskill may not be available for week 1. They're hopeful. But you always wonder what John Lynch means by hopeful. You're hopeful with an injury situation and never makes you feel comfortable or confident that the right thing is going to happen. So they bring him in potentially as, insurance in case Daniel Brunskill isn't ready to go. He brought up still questions about Mike McGlinchey's available for week 1, questions about Daniel Brunskill's availability for week 1. So this is an installation move. You bring in a guy that had logged over 500 snaps last year between left tackle and right tackle, a guy that's logged snaps at guard and center, and it at least ensures you that you have a guy that can play a bunch of different positions if you need it to happen. If Brendel goes down and Brunskill's not healthy, you don't have to turn to Nick Zakelj, who hasn't really had any experience, but you can go to Blake Hance. I think that's what they're doing right here. As far as technique and skills, I'm going to get more into the film, hopefully release something later on where I'm able to break down his film all the way and get a better understanding of who he is technique-wise. I've seen the cherry pick clips of him handling Joey Bosa and all that, but I want to see the ins and outs, the bad plays too. Those are very important to see. So I think that's kind of where I'm at right now, and the things that John Lynch gave us a little bit more perspective on what they were thinking by putting in the claim for Hance. There was no guarantee they were going to get him, but once they did, they went ahead and moved on from Sermon because they felt they needed that value. 10 offensive linemen right now for the San Francisco 49ers. That's a lot more than I thought. I thought it was 8 or 9 potentially, but it works out. And Mr. Corey says, did you get to observe Tariq Castro Fields in practice? Do you look like he's better than Ambry Thomas? So I watched Castro Fields in practice every single day. The fact that the cornerbacks often worked out right in front of us meant most of the time I was staring right at them as they went through drills. But one thing that was highly noticeable about Tariq Castro Fields was he didn't look 4.3 on film. Now, there's a lot of guys that run sub 4.4 40s, and then they just don't see it, especially right off the bat on film or in person. I think Tariq Castro Fields is definitely fast, but when you're thinking, when you're learning, you slow down your processes. And I don't think Tariq Castro Fields ever got to play up to full potential because he's a rookie that was still learning the scheme and learning what he had to do. They gave him a lot of opportunities to go out there and compete. I thought that Ambry Thomas outplayed him during training camp, and that's saying a lot because Ambry Thomas didn't have the best training camp there was. But I did think he played better than Castro Fields. Castro Fields often allowed players to catch the ball underneath and then rally to make tackles, but then his tackling wasn't on the level that I was expecting. Well, I think Castro Fields definitely can develop into a pretty good player in this league. I think that's why Washington pounced on him. But when you have the depth of the cornerback position like the 49ers do, it's a little bit harder to keep a player like Tariq Castro Fields. So they just felt like they had to move on. But yeah, Ambry Thomas definitely overall talent wise is a little bit of a better football player, and overall the way he played was just a little bit better. So Tariq Castro Fields not a bad player. I think he's going to develop nice in this league. I'm glad he got claimed by somebody because I think he can make an impact. But Ambry Thomas was definitely the better option moving forward. So I think when it comes down to it, Castro Fields ends up landing in a good situation for him, and hopefully gets some playing time. And KNDR says, and just like that, Eric Bischoff's Dante Johnson is back and better than ever. Yes, that's another thing that happened today is Dante Johnson makes his expected return to the San Francisco 49ers. He's signed to the practice squad, but John Lynch didn't mince any words, saying he fully expects Dante Johnson to be a part of this roster during the season and helping the football team. I think now the only question is who's going to start at safety opposite of Talanoa Hufanga. Will it be somebody like Tarvarius Moore, or will it be Dante Johnson? To me, Johnson makes a lot of sense. He's good in coverage, but I fully expect Dante Johnson to be the fourth safety when they play Chicago. They'll probably pull him up from the practice squad, and he'll do the practice squad thing for a few weeks as they're looking to make decisions at a few players, and plus they don't want to lose roster spots in other areas, so that would make sense to me. And then Twisted Clown says John is hopeful Mac will be ready week 1. Yeah, he is. I mean, they're hoping that these guys are going to be ready to go. That McGlinchey's going to be good. That Daniel Brunskill is going to be good. You just have to be prepared just in case it's not. And going ahead and insulating yourself to make sure you can win the first 2 or 3 games if something happens. I mean, and we're not out of the woods of Daniel Brunskill going on the IR. That was one thing that I was kind of paying attention to, the way they were keeping so many offensive linemen, that just maybe that will happen. And what's up, Ernest? How's it going? Welcome to chat. Hope you're having a good day. But also also John Lynch referenced in this about Nick Zakelj, and he talked about the fact that they see Nick Zakelj being a future center in this league. So the thought process that I've had hasn't been wrong. Nick Zakelj is a developmental center in this league, and what they're going to do is they're going to use Jake Brendel as a starter, Daniel Brunskill or somebody else is going to fill in as the backup until Nick Zakelj is ready to go. I think that's an exciting revelation, but not exactly a surprise to me, because I felt that was what was going to happen. I feel like Zakelj is going to have an opportunity to be the starter for the 49ers in 2023 and beyond. The intelligence off the charts, the physicality in college was there. So let's see if he can translate even more of that. And he has some really good reps over the preseason. He's just got to get more consistent with those. So I'm very, very hopeful about his potential. And then Golden Dragon says Daniel Brunskill equals knee tendonitis. He was dealing with knee tendonitis all throughout minicamp. Then he had a little bit of a hamstring issue against the Minnesota Vikings. All that is not good. That doesn't feel good. And then being able to, play in these games makes it more difficult. Of course, tendonitis is never fun. That was the end of Jalen Hurd. That was something that we've had other players dealing with as well. Tendonitis is uncomfortable and hard to play through. But if anyone can play, it's Brunskill. The guy doesn't miss football games. Just look at his football career. He's just one of those guys that normally lines up. So if he's going to be able to go, he'll go. I have full confidence in Daniel Brunskill. This is how he handles business. Mr. Corey says Lynch said he turned down trade offers during training camp for Sermon. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not kidding. Trey Sermon looked good during training camp. Trey Sermon is still highly valued around the league because they remember what he did at Ohio State. They remember what he did at Oklahoma. And so you have a quarterback that, now with Jalen Hurts, that they can have a nice relationship. He fits with what Philly does, and he has a big offensive line to run behind. But don't be surprised if Trey Sermon doesn't have some big carries and big runs, because I thought overall his vision has definitely matured. He's gotten better. His technique is better. So I look for him to do pretty well. I mean, he played an entire year for Bobby Turner and then got to work with Anthony Lynn. That has to make you a better running back, and I felt it did. Just wasn't good enough with the potential of the running backs around him. And that's one thing that John Lynch said. Jordan Mason just played so dang good during the preseason, he took the spot from him. And that's just how it goes. Sometimes you just get outplayed, and that's what happened to Trey Sermon. He got outplayed. Rick says, I agree. Everybody's going to be consistent and aggressive next week, and I ain't no week every game, but 49ers, my friend, cut. I think the 49ers are going to have an absolutely great week next week against the Chicago Bears. The roster for the Chicago Bears isn't the best, but they are an NFL roster. You got to go in there and win it, and it's going to be early game, 10 a.m. Those are always difficult when you travel to a different time zone, and they're going to have to overcome that, but I think they can. David Campbell says Lynch is such a great spokesman for the team. He never fails to mention all the hardworking people under him. It was great to hear how they root out these gems because of the scouts. Scouting department for the San Francisco 49ers has been fantastic. When you hear about some of the guys that they come up with, it's great. And you're right, John Lynch does a really good job of always making sure that he shares the wealth of credit. That is very important for a leader. Anytime that you can look around and give credit to the other guys who do work, they feel appreciated. And he probably really does appreciate them because they make him look better and better every single day. But that's why the 49ers have had so much success later in drafts, because of the outstanding scouting department. And what's up, SG? How's it going? Welcome to chat. Mr. Corey said, then why didn't Lynch trade him as opposed to cutting him for free? The thought might have been that maybe they were still thinking they could get Jordan Mason to the practice squad. Remember, when these teams are calling, it might be that they're calling for Trey Sermon initially, but once Jordan Mason gets in the games and starts showing out, then you realize, oh no, we can't get him to the practice squad. I guarantee when they came into training camp, their thought process was Trey Sermon's going to be on this team. Jordan Mason's going to make it to the practice squad. And Jordan Mason just completely played so good. Remember, years ago, Seattle came in. We're going to have Matt Flynn as a starting quarterback. Russell Wilson is going to be his backup. And then he got outplayed. Russell Wilson became the starter. This just happens in the NFL. So your intentions might be one way, but when it happens, it flips. And I think that's why they kept him an extra day. They were trying to facilitate a trade. When that didn't materialize, then it was like, okay, we got to release this guy because we claimed somebody else. And they did. They ended up waiving him. So, yeah. Lou says, Ant, in Lynch's 9-1 interview, he said he had trade offers for Sermon. If so, why didn't he take rather than release him? That's just another example of why it shows he is all over his head as GM. I don't agree. Because you're getting offers doesn't mean you want to make a trade. And the 49ers had a lot of value because he was playing so good. You don't just trade him. At the point where he was getting those calls, Trey Sermon was outplaying Jordan Mason. I don't want anyone to think that wasn't happening. That was absolutely happening at training camp. Mason was getting limited reps. It wasn't that they were bad reps. He was improving. But Trey Sermon looked like the more legitimate starting running back in this league. At some point, it changed. Jordan Mason got more reps. Jordan Mason got better. Jordan Mason got more decisive. His practices got better. His preseason games proved that he was the better running back, and he won the position. At that point, John Lynch probably did reach out to other players. The problem was everyone knew that Jordan Mason had outplayed him, and now Trey Sermon's value wasn't as big around the league. Waited an extra day. You tried to move on from him. It didn't materialize, but I don't think that's bad GMing. Bad GMing would be not having a talented roster like they do, where they have pieces that other teams want. So some of these teams, I'm sure, sat back and waited to see who the 49ers were going to release or waive. Then they went ahead and pounced on it. So, yeah, I'm not really worried about it. Mike says, is it just me? Was it weird as hell seeing Jimmy at the podium again? Yeah, we're going to get into some of those as well, because since you brought it up, Mike, I do want to get into some of the things that happened today. And one of the things that happened was Trey Lance had some conversations about Jimmy Garoppolo. And here's what he said about his first encounter with Jimmy Garoppolo after the news came down that Jimmy was going to be a part of the roster in 2022.
We talked the night that the news broke, just on the phone. We texted, and then I saw him in the morning. That next morning we had practice, so came in. We talked at his locker for a little bit. I mean, it was all love. Nothing's changed between us. He's like, man, I can say it a million times, but he's been my big bro, and nothing's gonna change there.
It's all love from Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. There's some interesting stuff that's going on there. Of course, anytime you add somebody in, it makes it a little bit more interesting. Lou is saying he's not a Lynch person, and that's okay. But anytime you build a roster this strong, you gotta think that the GM is doing a pretty good job. And just like you said, we just disagree. We agree to disagree. That is okay as well. Trey Lance is handling situations the right way. All love between him and Jimmy Garoppolo. Working out that relationship is going to be interesting. But Trey Lance understands what's going on. He understood from the beginning. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, once again, transparent with him about bringing Jimmy Garoppolo back, him being the backup quarterback, that was a possibility. And then when it happened, letting him know ahead of time that was going to happen. And so he's able to handle it and kind of put it in his mind how things are going to go. And I think that's really, really good for him. And that's important. And what's up, Guy? Welcome to chat. It says Trey Lance is getting picked off by Taylor Rapp twice in week 4. That's a bold prediction. I like bolds around here. We'll see if that happens. And Guy, if it happens, make sure you come back in week 4, after week 4, and let me know about it. I have no problem with that. Mike Thompson's liking Lynch as a GM, and now we're seeing a lot of things going on. And Brad Jones says, good to see Jimmy didn't ghost Trey. But you know what's nice about Trey Lance is Trey Lance has a really, really good understanding of the situation, all the quarterbacks involved, and then what that entails. And he had another thing to say, and I want to play this clip because he's talking about him and Jimmy Garoppolo on the team now. So before he talked about all love, now he's talking about them on the team, and maybe they understand that there's been a role change.
No, I don't think the relationship changes the dynamic. It's different, the role or different roles. But like I said, man, he's still gonna be a huge resource for me. I'm gonna be able to ask him questions, bounce ideas off him, watch tape, plays in practice, asking him after each play. What did he see? Just like same thing I could do with Nate, and same thing I could do with Brock, and same thing I could do with all of our QB coaches.
Yeah, I think he has an understanding of exactly, the different dynamics, that the relationship stays the same. It's just they change their roles because now Trey Lance is a starting quarterback and Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup, where last year it was the influx. Now, I think Jimmy Garoppolo probably felt more pressure that Trey Lance was going to take his position than Trey Lance feels pressure that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to take his position. I think it is entirely different situations, but I like that he's aware. I mean, being self-aware and then being aware of what's going on around you is very important. And I like the way that, that Trey Lance is getting into this. And Lou is saying, Ant, the draft is a crapshoot, but Lynch continues to sacrifice draft capital for bad risk. Pettis, Williams, Hurd, Sermon are just a few examples. You're right. You could definitely cherry pick those examples. Here's the problem. For all of those, there's a George Kittle in the 5th round. There's a Talanoa Hufanga in the 5th round. There's an Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. There's a Fred Warner in the 3rd round. Deebo Samuel, who everyone thought was too often injured at South Carolina. For every one of those examples, there's more really big examples of him striking. This scouting department being able to hit on undrafted free agents. So, yeah, you're right. There's guys who you miss on all the time. Every single GM, go back and look at every single general manager around the league, even the best ones, and they have misses along the way. The key is hitting more times than you miss. And I don't think anyone can look at the 49ers' current draft class right now that they had in this current season and say it was a bad one. Number 1, Drake Jackson at 61 looks impressive so far. Then you got the 3rd round picks, TDP, who's been playing pretty good. He's going to have to develop, of course, but he's definitely running with a lot of physicality and velocity. You add in Danny Gray, who we've already seen the impact he can make taking the top off the defense. Spencer Burford in the 4th round, who could be a starter. Nick Zakelj, who could be your future starter. Samuel Womack, who's going to start at nickel corner probably, or at least have a split time with Diamondo Lenore. I mean, those are just your first 6 round picks. That is absolutely impressive. Not to mention you have Kalia Davis, who's going to be on the NFI this year, who might impact this roster next year. So, I mean, yeah, we could definitely go and look. I mean, Joe Williams was a Kyle Shanahan guy. That's true. He wanted him. I mean, and if you're going to argue that they're not maybe hitting on running backs, that's a clear argument that we can have. But I think sometimes taking multiple players at multiple positions in one draft ensures you get one that works out. So with Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd, Kyle had a particular way he was looking to attack defenses. Didn't work out with Hurd. Took a risk in the 3rd round. But it's a guy that had so much position versatility. You have to take some of these chances. So I'm not with you all the way on that. I get where people come from about some of these draft problems. But I feel like the 49ers do a pretty good job of drafting. And I think it's been illustrated recently in recent memory of the last couple of years. I mean, Diamondo Lenore looks good. Ombre Thomas played in the playoffs for us pretty strong last year. Talanoa Hufanga is going to be a starter. Aaron Banks is going to start at left guard. I mean, I'm not seeing like the big misses. Trey Lance is the starting quarterback. It looks like they've hit, especially over the last 2 drafts. So, I mean, yeah, we could keep looking back at 2017, 2018, 2019. You can find, players that didn't work out, but I think you could do that with every single roster. That's just kind of my opinion. I just think that's how it works sometimes. But I think that overall, the John Lynch listens to Adam Peters. They work well together, and they have a really good scouting department that goes out and finds gems. And anytime that you can hit on a player later in the rounds, yeah, the first round pick might have not worked out. Solomon Thomas didn't work out, but you know who did? George Kittle in the 5th round. And I don't think anyone would complain now if you look back about George Kittle in the 1st round, because that's the kind of player. So it doesn't always hit. Even the great Bill Walsh had positions he missed on. It's just, as an evaluator, you're hoping you get enough opinions that you can make the right decisions, the most informed. I feel like the 49ers are definitely trending in the right direction. Let's see. We got a lot of things going on in chat. Everyone's having a lot of cool conversations about it, and I think that's important. And Harris says, what do you think Debo and Kittle's stats will look like this year? I think that's an interesting question. I think both of them are going to approach 1,000 yards receiving, because I do think they're going to get involved with this offense. I know a lot of people are looking at Brandon Ayuk and saying, hey, he has a great relationship with Trey Lance. I fully expect that to, them to have chemistry. And I do it, in fact, as well. I think Brandon Ayuk's going to take another step forward for a couple reasons. Number one, him and Trey Lance do have a good chemistry. But also, secondly, there's going to be so much attention paid to Deebo Samuel this year. Brandon Ayuk's going to have opportunities. You throw in the fact that Brandon Ayuk came in the most prepared he's ever been for NFL football. Fantastic. All of his routes look the same, no matter if he's breaking out, breaking in, taking it up the seam. It doesn't matter. They all look the same and consistent. And that's good news for the 49ers. And that is what Kyle Shanahan wanted, that violence on those runs, on those routes. He's violent. He presses these guys, and at the top of his stem, he makes great breaks. So I think that is something that Kyle's been pushing for, and he's going to get it out of Ayuk. They have 3 legitimate chances to get 1,000-yard receivers between Kittle, Debo, and Brandon Ayuk. It could be a really fun years for these guys as they absolutely rack up stats. That's a good question. That was a really good question. Marketing Pro says 49ers run game suspect. Marketing Pro. Is it, though? Did you watch Elijah Mitchell play in the preseason? No, we didn't even play our starting running back. We didn't even play Trent Williams, the best left tackle in the entire game. Mike McGlinchey didn't even play barely at all in the preseason. The run game is not suspect. You're not keeping 4 tight ends and 5 physical running backs if your run game is going to be suspect. Spencer Burford can run block. Aaron Banks can run block. It's going to be just fine. I like when Marketing Pro comes in here. He always makes the conversation interesting, and so I have no problems with it. Golden Dragon says the Trey Lance is better than ever. So yeah, maybe. And then Brad Jones says no team has perfect drafts. Seriously, the spine of the team is built on the drafts and undrafted free agents. I'm with you. And Marketing Pro's talking preseason. What's up, Spy Nick Danger? If you're going to rely on preseason Marketing Pro for your arguments, have fun. I don't even have to argue with you on that. But I wanted to get into some of the things that Jimmy Garoppolo said as well, because Jimmy got to talk to the press for the first time, and I thought we had some interesting things that came out of it. And he talked first about just how weird things were at training camp, and I was there. Everything felt weird as he was on the side field. Listen to what Jimmy Garoppolo had to say about the weird situation.
Yeah, it was weird. It was different than any situation I've ever been in. I've been in some weird ones too, so that's saying something. But no, it was. I think things worked out for the best. It was a lot of ups and downs, rocky roads here and there. But I think throughout the whole thing, I'm happy with where I'm at. Happy to be with the Niners. I think the Niners are happy to have me back, and it's. I think things are working out pretty well.
It's one of those things where it's not exactly what he wanted. He understands that he had to come into training camp because that's what's expected with his contract, and he had to do it. And so, you have to do that. And at Jimmy Garoppolo, you could tell by some of the things he was saying that it made it a little bit strange for him, just being there, but yet not being in the meetings, not going through practices, being on a side field and practicing. He was throwing to some of the guys that were coming off of injuries. There was just a lot of interesting things for Jimmy. And I was there in person when Jimmy Garoppolo showed up on the field and was running on the side. I mean, we put a video up like right away seeing it. The reaction he got from the fans was surprising to me, as pretty much universally everyone cheered Jimmy Garoppolo, which I thought was nice. He had done a lot for this organization. But you could tell Jimmy just looked uncomfortable. He didn't know how to react to the fans. He didn't know if he should salute them, what he should do, if it was drawing too much attention to him. Jimmy was definitely uncomfortable, and I think he talked about that a little bit here. It's a weird situation. said the weirdest he's ever been a part of. And he said he's been a part of some weird ones. And I'm sure anything in New England with Tom Brady made it interesting for sure. So I thought that was weird. And then John Wilcox asked a good question. What happened to Donovan West? I don't know. I don't think Donovan West has signed with anyone. He has not signed with the 49ers practice squad. He was highly touted coming out of Arizona State. I mean, we did, war rooms all during the offseason and up to the draft process discussing who was going to be drafted. It was pretty much universal from every content creator that we brought in that Donovan West was going to go in the 3rd or 4th round. It was one of those things where I was one of the ones that was often in disagreement. I've preferred other guys over him, but Donovan West, I did think he was draftable. I thought he was definitely good enough to be drafted and good enough to make a football team. But when we got into training camp in the preseason, Donovan West's inconsistencies that he showed in college persisted. He still played high. He still played narrow with his footwork. He still was losing grip of people. That he was not able to latch on and have complete control. He would get into that chest plate, but he wouldn't hold on to them. And I think that was a real issue for West. A lot of people, I believe, thought it was the thumb. I know I started thinking maybe it was the thumb because he had the thumb surgery before the season. Maybe that was the reason he couldn't do it in college and he was going to change in the pros. Not the case. Donovan West still struggled with all those things. And then you get to some inconsistent snapping, and all of a sudden he's not a guy on the team. Now, 49ers have decided that Nick Zakelj is going to be the future rookie center. So it's not going to be West. Alec Lindstrom is out there as well, available. I think he's going to end up signing. I don't know if he did sign on a practice squad yet. But, yeah, we'll see what happens with Donovan West. But so far, I haven't seen anything. And if anyone knows in chat that he landed somewhere, go ahead and let me know. I would love to see that. Yeah, Lou is saying West was cut. Mr. Corey's asking about Segunda Luby. I still have not heard anything about him. The 49ers have went other ways with other linebackers, and they haven't been willing to go with Luby. So they must not have saw something, or he's not willing to come back onto the practice squad. Maybe he's looking for another situation, or they've seen enough. They've decided they're going McCrary Bowl, and they're not really interested in going Luby. That would be a little bit surprising, even though I did kind of foresee him getting waived in the second cuts. He did not. He made it. It was Jeremiah Gemmel that was cut. And then Luby kind of had a pretty good game the last week against the Houston Texans, but he hasn't been able to land on a football team, which has been interesting. So I thought that, those were some of the things. Mr. Corey says, let's bring Mostert back. There's no way we're getting Mostert back. As much as I would love to have Raheem Mostert back, I just don't think it's in the cards. Not something that they can make happen. So maybe they will, maybe they will. And since we're about halfway through the show, thank you everyone that's come through so far. If you have the opportunity, if you could give this video a like, I would really appreciate that. It means a lot. And if you're a first-time watcher, you've watched for a while but haven't subscribed, think that I've earned a subscription, please subscribe. Really appreciate it. We just passed 3K. We're working towards getting to another number and continuing to build the channel. So I really appreciate that so much. Bobo says, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I love optimism, Bobo. Thank you for coming in chat and throwing that down. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have made sure that we have a quarterback room that even if we suffer an injury, we have the potential guys that can go ahead and get in there and win football games. And we hear, Jimmy Garoppolo talk about the weird situation. Now let's listen when Matt Mayoko asked Jimmy Garoppolo if he had asked for his release. And this is what Jimmy Garoppolo had to say about it.
That just wasn't the way I wanted it to go. I think that there was a thought of that at one point. Trust me, there was. But that came and went, and I don't know. Things just kind of kept falling into place. And I'm one of those people that, I don't want to really ruffle the feathers too much here and there, and kind of want to just go with the flow. And that's kind of the way the training camp was going, and I was happy with it. And like I said, things worked out, and I'm happy now.
Jimmy's not about ruffling feathers, and I think that was why it was important for this clip to be played. Because you have Trey Lance as the starting quarterback. And if anytime you have a backup that is going to be this respectful, that is not going to want to ruffle feathers, but is going to want to do what the team wants, that's good news for Trey Lance. You don't have to worry about Jimmy Garoppolo, doing things behind the scenes to try to take over Trey Lance's spot, because that's not what he's about. That's not the guy he is. That's why I thought it was so important. But, he didn't ask for a release. He just let things play out, and things worked out a certain way. And he felt like it worked out to where, everything signaled him coming back to the San Francisco 49ers. So I thought that was interested. And then John Wilcox says, has West been claimed? No, I don't believe he has. So I don't believe that West has been claimed overall. And Mr. Corey says, Ant, let's do it. Levi's and Chant, we want Mostert, we want Tart back. If Mostert was available, I would be all over that. I just don't think Mike McDaniel is going to let anyone near Raheem Mostert. He knows what that dynamic speed means to his offense. I don't think he lets that happen. As far as Jaquiski Tart, I would love to have Tart back, but it just seems like for whatever reason, they have decided to distance themselves from Jaquiski Tart. Now, that could change tomorrow. They could go ahead and bring him in, but so far that hasn't been the case, and until it does, just nothing. And Mike Thompson says, I'm rooting for Mostert and McDaniels with the 49ers East. Yeah, I am too. I'm going to root for the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to root for Mike McDaniel. I think he's a good guy. I always enjoyed his pressers. I thought he was fantastic, the way he spoke, and just the way he approached the game was fun. Raheem Mostert's one of the fun guys to watch, and he's a guy that I think everyone can support. He's just a good guy, and so I will support them as well. So anytime I'm watching the Teal, I'll be rooting for those two guys. I think that'll be fun. And I think a lot of people that are 49er fans are going to catch those as well. And then John says, what up, TCC? Who signed Trey Sermon? So Trey Sermon went over to the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's what happened. And Marketing Pro saying Tart a Ram. I don't know if that has happened, but Marketing Pro is claiming that. But Trey Sermon ends up going over to the Philadelphia Eagles. They claim him. They put him with Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to have an interesting thing there because you're going to have, a running quarterback. You can run the read option. You can do the things that you need to do. And so maybe that'll happen. Maybe they'll bring him, or maybe they'll get that nice offense going with them, that read option. Jalen Hurts did that to San Francisco a little bit last year in week 2. We'll see if that goes on full display now. With the change of scenery is going to be good for Sermon. I hope Sermon ends up working out. I really do. I want to see him do well. And so far, he hasn't worked out. He didn't work out for the 49ers, but maybe his career will work out the right way. And then Lou says Mostert couldn't stay healthy. That was the issue, but I liked him. Yeah, as far as speed and dynamics go, just one of the fastest, greatest to do it. But 2 straight years, injuries, and you just can't count on him. 49ers weren't willing to invest in him. But for Mike McDaniel, you take the risk. You're going in your first season. You're going to have a little bit of leeway, but getting that dynamic speed is what they were all about. And especially when you add Tyreek Hill, you add Raheem Mostert, already go with Jalen Waddle. Tremendous speed from them. They're going to be very fun to watch. San Francisco John says, glad to see Jimmy G shooting shots at the best writers or at the beat writers. You always got to love Jimmy G taking care of business. And David Campbell says, could you see Trey involved in the run game more with Jimmy as a backup? They definitely could. That's the thing, right? Now you don't have to worry about those situations. I think, which if you had Sudfeld, and, Trey said some hurtful things about Sudfeld. He was happy to see him land. But when you have Nate Sudfeld, Trey Sermon has to worry about his body at all times and staying healthy. I think Kyle Shanahan, if he needs to in the fourth quarter now, he can dial up a run play to Trey Lance and know that if something happened, he would have Jimmy Garoppolo, to back him up. Now, with all that being said, they do not want Trey Lance to get hurt. They want him to be the starting quarterback all year because he gives them the best opportunity to win, and that's what they're about. But, yeah, you at least rest a little bit easier that if some freak thing happens, if Trey hits his finger on somebody's helmet or whatever the situation is, that you've got Jimmy Garoppolo to trot out there, and he understands this offense, understands what he needs to do, which is so important. And so, yeah, I really like that. And I see a good comment here from Jerome, and I'm going to get that into a second. But I wanted to go off of what David said about Jimmy, because when it came down to it, Jimmy talks about how he's happy with the situation. And this is the last video clip I wanted to show, is Jimmy talking about this situation and how it all ended up working out.
A lot of things, actually. I think just the opportunity to be with the same team that I'm familiar with, offense I'm familiar with, coaches, players, all that stuff really played a big role in it. Seeing the other opportunities that were out there, and just, you weigh in the pros and cons of everything. Trust me, there was a lot of back and forth going on just with other teams and what I wanted my future to look like. And so this is what I wanted. I'm happy the way it worked out. And, it's just the familiarity, I think, was a big part of it.
Understands the offense, knows what to do, everything that's going on with it. Looked at some of the other situations, had some back and forth with the team. But, this was the best situation for him. And Jimmy Garoppolo realized what's going on. And, of course, I thought that was so important. The clips that we played today illustrated where Trey Lance's mind is with the situation, where Jimmy Garoppolo's is. And I think when it comes down to it, all parties involved are happy that this ended up working out, that this relationship, is still intact. And now the 49ers can put out the best possible room. Trey Lance even said that the room got better with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back. And I thought that was very clear. The fact Jimmy wants to be here is exciting. That will make it easier for everyone. And we had some really good chats that came through as well that I wanted to make sure that we got into. I didn't want to miss them because I saw some good stuff. And Jerome Clay said, if you truly understand competition, whoever Jordan Mason is up against, he will outshine them because he's cut from a different cloth. Believe that. If he stays healthy, other people lose jobs, no doubt. I like Jordan Mason. I like his attitude. I like the way he approaches the game. There are things in his game that, are absolutely tremendous that he does at a high level, and there's things he's continuing to work at. As he works at those things, I expect him to get entirely better. So I'm excited about Mason overall and what he's going to add to this football team. I'm also, on the fence about who's going to be the short yardage back. TDP has been slotted in there. He got all the reps during the preseason. But I won't be shocked if Jordan Mason doesn't go in there and absolutely take that spot. So excellent comment from Jerome. I like that. I like the belief also in Jordan Mason. Mike Thompson says Sermon may play well with the Eagles. Eagles may be the team to beat in the NFC. The Eagles have a very tough team. Defensively, one of the best defensive lines. A little bit of questions in the secondary, but they have some really, really good football players there. Good offensive line. I think it comes down to Jalen Hurts, what he can do. But they've got a tremendous amount of talent. They moved on from Jalen Reagor, which they probably needed to do. But yeah, I think they've got a very talented roster at a team that's going to need to be reckoned with in the playoffs. We'll see what happens with the Eagles, but overall, I think that was a solid move from them. I don't see him, becoming a Pro Bowl or anything like that, but I think he'll make some plays for them. San Francisco said, I did like seeing the new O-lineman manhandle the other Bosa. Hopefully he comes in and keeps up with that blocking prowess. Yeah, that's the only thing, John, with some of these cherry-picked clips. You're going to see the best highlights. You want to see some of the tougher ones along the way. So I think that Jay Ellie coming through, letting us know who signed. Says Saguna Luby signed with the Colts. So good for him. He's staying in the league, and I think that's important. WTM says, as of today, do you like the roster more or less? I love the roster. This is a really good roster put together with extreme depth around. They've insulated themselves to be able to handle a lot of injuries. And then you look at the practice squad. Whenever you have a practice squad that has two of my favorite young players in Quantrez Knight and Taylor Hawkins, but also has two veterans that I really wanted to keep, especially Kamoko Ture, I think you got to be excited about it. So they got young players and a mixture of talent all throughout this roster. All 70 guys, in fact, can be excited about. Seth says Jimmy will be a great trade bait when a desperate team needs that one midseason. I think you're right. And as long as it's the right situation, the way that you've heard Jimmy talk is the right situation is important to him for his career to make sure that he still looks good. He doesn't want to go to a bad team, look bad, not have an opportunity to have not only another good contract, but another second half of his career where he's able to compete, win championships, win playoff games. That's what he wants. He's a competitor. So yeah, I think there will be some trade bait out there. And if somebody suffers an injury, somebody will call the 49ers. And at that point, the Niners will have to decide if the juice is worth the squeeze. If you're going to offer enough for Jimmy Garoppolo, then we'll be willing to entertain that. And all the while, Jimmy's got to sign off on it. So if both parties sign off on it and they send Jimmy down the road, there's going to be a pretty significant amount of compensation that comes down. 49ers will get that compensation ready to move forward and continuing to build their roster. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo gets his chance for a restart. So I think that was interesting. And Jimmy had a lot of comments about his injury too, talking about the shoulder was worse than the thumb. And I think a lot of people figured out along the way, but talked about how he rehabbed for 3 to 4 weeks. Just didn't get better, so he had to have surgery. And I think that's been pretty consistent all throughout the Jimmy Garoppolo camp and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. I know there's some stuff going around that there's conspiracies that he did it to purposely not get traded. I don't know if those are the case. Mike Thompson says, so Jimmy's salary can be up to like $16 million, I believe, if he doesn't play and hit his incentives, he would make about $6 million. Does the other $10 million roll over to next year's cap? So if he doesn't reach his incentives, so if he doesn't have those performance accelerations kick in, then it doesn't kick in. So what you have is a $6.5 million. He'll have the roster bonus because he's going to be active for these football games, which is $500,000. That will account for this year's salary cap. All the other ones are likely to be earned if he does not meet those incentive requirements. Those do not hit the salary cap at all. If he does meet them, then they would hit next year's salary cap. So it's a low risk for this season, high reward. You're betting on Trey Lance staying healthy and not needing Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you do, he's ready. So the way I look at it is, if you need him to be a starting quarterback, he gets paid to be a starting quarterback with these incentives. If you don't need him and he's a backup, he's getting paid as a backup at $6.5 million. To me, it was a well worked out contract. Both sides really came to an agreement that makes sense. So overall, I like it for sure. And then JLE letting us know the Giants signed Davis and Jefferson. So those guys are off the books. So those guys aren't available. Mike says, and how does the salary work if we trade him mid-season? It ends up being prorated. So he gets paid per game. So whatever, money is available still when you get to that, that point, is a prorated salary. So if you trade him, it comes off the books. You only have to pay the guaranteed money. So it's an interesting thing, but the other team would have to pick up the remainder of his salary. You would be on the hook for whatever he had earned throughout the games that he had played for your football team or been a backup and dressed for your football team. Mr. Corey says you can only have one back, Buckner, Mostert, or Tomlinson. Who are you taking? I'm taking Mostert. I'm not. I mean, as much as I want to say Mostert because I love his explosiveness at the running back position and I would love to plug and play him, I'm worried about him getting hurt. And I know that one of these guys or actually two of these guys have been absolutely consistent. So I would go with Buckner for the mere reason is why not just make your defensive line even better? Imagine Buckner being out there on obvious pass downs. It'd be freakish. So I would probably go Buckner, even though, I mean, I guess salary wouldn't matter, but I would normally have went with Mostert if you'd talked to me last year, but I'm just so worried about his injuries. And I've seen Elijah Mitchell and I'm impressed with him. Does he have the same dynamics as Raheem Mostert? No. Mostert changes the game in a big way. I'm so worried about him being hurt. So I couldn't do it. WTM says, who is likely to be available first, Verrett or Ward? I think they're both going to be pretty close to the same time. I would actually expect Verrett to be more available early. I think after 4 games, Jason Verrett will be available. I think Jimmy Ward is probably closer to 6 to 8 weeks. I think it would be smart to wait. And as long as the 49ers are winning football games, then you go ahead and you wait on Jimmy Ward. Being patient with both of them is going to be important this year. Making sure you have both of them later on in this season is more important than rushing them back. Now, you might be more inclined to rush them back if your team is struggling. I don't expect that. With games against Chicago, which Jay Sanders keeps saying the Bears are going to win, I'm still waiting to know who Jay Sanders thinks is a talented offensive player besides Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields. But you got guys that you got to be able to get out there. So you can win against Chicago, you can win against Seattle. Those are 2 winnable football games. Denver's tough. Los Angeles Rams are tough. No joke. But if you get out of that situation 3-1, I think you're pretty happy about the way your team's looking, and you can kind of slow play those guys in. We want those guys to be ready, and that's important. And Mike Thompson's agreeing and says Buckner for sure. Yeah, Buckner, I mean, just fantastic. Absolute technician. Jay Sanders is in spilling some weird stuff. That is so funny. David Montgomery. I do like David Montgomery, so well done, Jay Sanders. Appreciate that. But yeah, so all these comments that we had coming from the 49ers today, I think is good news. And I'm glad we're getting through it because we're transitioning now from 53-man talk. This week is going to be all about 353, the roster, continuing through that. But then once we get to next week, it's all about the Chicago Bears. It's all about continuing, this getting preparation for Chicago and the season actually starting. Just think, guys. As of today, we're a week away from football. Next Thursday, NFL football is back. And then actually, it's just a week from Sunday, 49ers football is back. Can't wait. This is going to be so exciting. I've been waiting for this. It feels like it's been forever, even though it's only been since the end of January that we've waited for 49ers football to come back. Mike Thompson said that Ward injury will hurt horribly. It's not good. The 49ers have tried to insulate themselves at the safety position in a multitude of ways. Number one, they have Tarvarius Moore, who had, been playing pretty tough before he had the injury. Now, is he all the way back? Not sure. Don't know if he's going to get back all the way. And then you have Dante Johnson, they signed to the practice squad. They have Gibson, they signed to the practice squad. And then they have young, undrafted free agent Taylor Hawkins, who I really like a lot. So I think that they've done a good job of insulating themselves at the safety position. And they're probably going to have 3 guys on the active roster when we go into the Chicago. And they're just going to elevate one of these guys. Fully expected to be Dante Johnson. He had a lot of practice with the 49ers at free safety. And I expect him to do that. I think they'll roll in with Odom, Hufanga at strong safety, Tarvarius Moore, and Dante Johnson at the safety position, at the free safety position. So, yeah, those are some guys right there. Mr. Corey says, the only reason I didn't say Buckner is because I'm ready to give Kinlaw his last chance. I think Kinlaw's going to do fantastic, but I think, when looking at it, Buckner is not exactly a guy that plays the nose tackle position. Buckner played interior a lot, and he played the 3-tech. So it would actually be Armstead and Buckner that would be in a rotation. Now, you could easily, especially in nickel situations, play them together, slide Armstead over to that nose tackle role. But you're right. You want to see Kinlaw spin. But that's out of the players that I was available to pick from. Buckner, to me, is just so dynamic. I want him a part of this rotation. Having Kinlaw be rotating in as well is good for everyone. So that's how I would roll with it. I'm definitely down with all that. Mike Thompson says, who's ready for some effing football? Yes. So that's what I'm saying. And Golden Dragon says, number 30, George Odom is going to ball out against the Bears. I think he's going to make an impact on special teams. I don't know how much he's going to get to play on defense. If he does play on defense, then what does that mean? Is Hufanga off the field? Did they roll with him next to Hufanga? That would be interesting. But I do think he's going to make special teams plays. I think him and Oren Burks are definitely big-time special teams guys that we need to count on to make plays. David Campbell says, I'm just not a Tarvarius Moore fan. He's the slowest 4-3 player I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, Tarvarius Moore hasn't had an impressive training camp. He didn't have an impressive preseason. Let's see what happens when they start scheming things up. Maybe that will help him out. But he hasn't played bad enough that the 49ers aren't willing to go get Jaquiski Tart or willing to, release him and add Dante Johnson to the active roster. So we got to remember that. But you're right. He has underperformed. I think coming out of 2019, everyone thought in 2020 he was ready to elevate and take over next to Jimmy Ward. That just hasn't materialized. We'll see if they end up getting there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, right now it hasn't been that great. Hopefully it works out. WTM says, what's your take on Trent only getting 1 All-Pro and Bosa 0? Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the league. I think he deserves to be an All-Pro every single year he plays at the level that he played. He's a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I think after a couple years, he's going to be considered the best 49ers offensive lineman in history, which is saying a lot. He just does it at that high level. With Bosa, Bosa's going to have himself another tremendous year. He got absolutely robbed of an All-Pro last year. That will not be the case this year. Nick Bosa will be an All-Pro. He's going to prove to everyone what's up. Plus, it's a contract year. He's going to be motivated because he could easily take his money, which is starting at $30 million, to $35 or $40 million annually. Oh, boy, that's a lot of money. But Nick Bosa probably deserves it. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been very clear. As long as they are running the show in San Francisco, Nick Bosa will be a part of the roster. I think that makes a lot of sense. Mike says Moore is not a 4-3 guy anymore after the Achilles. I think that's very true. Easy. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And Mr. Corey says Tarvarius Moore has been living off his 4-3 stuff for years. Yeah, I want to see what his development is here. How quick is he able to decipher what offenses are doing? Is he able to recognize looks? If he can start using the mental part of it, he's still fast enough. He's not a 4-3 guy, no. But he's still fast enough to be able to make those plays. Instincts are big, but recognition is even bigger. Because if you're football smart and you understand what a team is trying to do to you or how they're trying to attack, you're able to anticipate and get there. Certain things tip you off. How far the quarterback drops. What the running or where the wide receiver lines up on the field. Places they're going to be able to attack. All those things are giveaways. Also, you start looking at teams and you start figuring out instances where they have certain personnel groupings together and what those mean. There's a variety of different things. And Jason Verrett is one of the best at doing that. Him and Richard Sherman were fantastic. And we've seen Fred Warner decipher things as well. If they can translate that and continue to translate that to the other players, a guy like Tarvarius Moore could benefit hugely from that. Being able to decipher, and then now all of a sudden you don't have to have that speed. You can go attack and get there at the right moment. So hopefully he's grown. I think if he did grow, that'd be big for this 49ers team because we really do need Tarvarius Moore to step up, especially early in the season as Jimmy Ward's on IR. Mike says Trent may be one of the greatest linemen in NFL history. It might come down to that. We'll see what happens. I'm excited about all of that. And you know what? Jay Sanders is letting everyone know in chat what's going on with the Bears, which I enjoy. Thank you so much when you come in and you're from another team, especially a team we're about to play. Having a conversation about the team is fun. So talking about players that are going to be playing, players that are out, it's exciting. And I think that that's the kind of discourse we like in chat. So well done, Jay Sanders, for having a nice conversation with everybody about it. I love it. WTM says, can you see a 5-2 start? I definitely think it's possible. I mean, you just have to make sure you win a couple of games. There's going to be some difficult ones along the way. You have the Rams twice, which is not easy. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, which is never easy proposition. You have the Denver Broncos. But if you go start the season 3-0 or 4-0, in fact, I think that's your best chance to go 5-2, knock off the Denver Broncos, knock off the Rams, then you have a real good chance of getting it done. But as easy as it is to go 5-2, you could easily see the 49ers going 3-4. I don't think that's the case. I think the 49ers are going to win a lot of football games this year. I think they've built it the right way. Defense is going to keep them in the game. But yeah, 5-2 I think is realistic. It makes a lot of sense to me. So maybe that goes in. Braxton Jones, I seen Jay Sanders bring it up. Braxton Jones was a player that everyone was high on in the draft, and he's actually had a really good offseason and preseason. So I'm curious to watch him in person. Let's see if Nick Bosa gets lined up against him, or if they end up going Samson Ebukam. I think you're going to see Bosa move all over the place. So Bosa versus Braxton Jones is going to be fun. I can't wait to do the preview show next week. That way I could talk about key matchups. That might be one of them, just to let everyone in on it, but that's going to be a lot of fun. David Campbell says, means the 49ers are living rent-free in the Bears fans' head. It could be. We'll see what's up. But I would like to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining the show. It was an absolutely fun show. You guys drove it again. The Q&A was fantastic. All the questions and comments were really good, and I appreciate you. Hope you all enjoy a Thursday night, the last Thursday night for a while without NFL football. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. There's going to be some content coming out tomorrow and along the way as well. Hope you guys all have a good one. Thank you so much for helping me out with this show. It's always good being in chat with every single one of you. Have a good night. Stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers.